Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Aphelion Marauder. Today, we are going to be talking about Gibraltar, the Tier 10 British heavy cruiser. This ship is obtainable through the Research Bureau for research points, and it's not a very well understood ship by many different standards. I am joined by my two clanmates, Icon and Manfred Bishop. The match today with the ship in question is a bit of a time as any to, I guess, showcase the ship. I had plans to talk about it a little bit later in the course of my YouTube channel, but this battle came up and it was a really good battle to kind of show off this boat. The thing I like most about Gibraltar is the fact that her shell fuse is set to where she very rarely overpens. And I really like that attribute about the ship because it allows you to make really good shots and take out targets that normally you wouldn't be able to really strike with any sort of efficiency. The drawback here with Gibraltar is that her shell speed isn't very quick. The air drag on these things is impressively reducing. So once you fire that about 10-kilometer range, you have pretty good dynamic performance. And afterwards, it begins to exponentially fall off. And it sometimes gets to the point where you miss shots that other ships would end up hitting. So you kind of have to really lead harder than you originally would, and sometimes this means that your shells just barely miss and barely clip islands in order to get those hits in. And for the most part, I start out the match here where I'm basically shooting like a stormtrooper every time my guns are up. I'm not really able to hit something with the veracity that I'd like to, or even scratch the target to begin with. And on top of that, what makes Gibraltar also a little more unforgiving is the fact that her hull is very squishy. This is not a Goliath hull like people like to say it is. It's an entirely different shape. It's wider. The design of the ship is has an entirely different layout. The gun turrets are quads instead of triples, and it relies on its smoke in order to break line of sight. And it has to sit more to the back. You can't run reload on this thing. Range mod is pretty much the way to go with it, because if you get close enough to where enemies can reliably hit you, then you'll easily take damage that you shouldn't be. At least at range, you can try to play with enemy shells, where if they have the shells that are slowing off in their velocity, and they come in to try to hit you, they can either be too slow to penetrate, or something of the sort to where they're really not doing a lot of, should we say, credible damage to your ship. And that's something that I believe really kind of helps you play Gibraltar as good as you possibly can, and something that I really like to work with the ship is, getting those long range shots in. As you can see, I'm able to shoot Salem here with pretty reliable hits now that he's slowed down to a stop. And I don't want him to continue to hold that corner either. Now, on top of it, with playing with Gibraltar, good line of sight and good vision control is what makes the ship really play well. If you don't have a lot of good spotting, which unfortunately in this map there's no destroyers on the field, it can be quite a bit of a challenge to play because you don't know what the hell's going on. And this is a ship that lives and dies off of whether or not it has any good reliable information for the most part to even work off of in any capacity. And sometimes you just need to make sure that ships are comfortable before you get shots on them, because otherwise they'll just scatter away at the first hit. And for example here, I've been holding my shots on the Henri. But Salem appears, I take a shot, and at this point I'm basically within the deathly killing range of all of these ships. Even though I'm scoring pretty good hits here on that Salem, you really don't want to be close with the Gibraltar. I'd say anything closer than 15 kilometers is basically brawling range for this ship. Once again, because of how squishy it is, which we will see very much demonstrated a little later. I pick up the kill on Salem here. And now I work on the Henri. But the Henri, bit of an interesting fellow. Me and him have a bit of a quick chat conversation. And I unfortunately have to panic smoke here because, as you can see, everything and its mother wants to shoot at me right now. Something I don't want. And I easily absorb damage. Easily absorb damage in this boat. So, with my vision cut off now, I kind of just have to wait a second. But I'm holding this position because I don't want A to be lost. I know C is pretty much a lost cause. Everyone is pushing C cap pretty reliably. So, you know, I want to be holding this position here. And this is where the Henri begins to ask me what boat it is that I have. Because he is genuinely curious as to what the Gibraltar is. Because not a lot of people see this boat out on the open seas very much. So at this point in the match, I'm taking shots at Burgoyne and just kind of beginning to put more rounds out on any of the targets that are presented in the match, because that's just what this ship is. It's basically an artillery support ship, and that's the role that it plays. And it's important because if you pair the ship with other good ships on the front line, like that of a Des Moines, or like that of any sort of kiter like a Hindenburg, one ship can be the distraction while the ship provides the supporting fire, and you can crush ships with Gibraltar. It is a challenge, but oh man, this boat can really just be that complement for what you're looking for. I see that with futility that I obviously have no business shooting that Burgoyne, because he speed boosts out of my shells, which is quite rude of him to do, I would say, but also kind of a silly use of a speed boost consumable. But nonetheless. Now, the match here is a little weird, because I go behind the island here, and I want to push into B just a little bit to provide a crossfire, but the problem is that the people at C, at this point, have entirely lost whatever that flank possibly was upholding. And at this point, I don't want C to really get overrun. So I want to be able to stop it from being the place in which they leverage a push off of. So I maneuver myself here into basically this kind of corner here within the B cap and the opening of this kind of funnel, if you will, to provide fire support for against the Henri, and to also catch whatever is going to pop out, hopefully broadside to me, at C. Because our Cherbourg at B7 there clearly is not interested in being proactive in the fight, which is rather unfortunate to say the least, but you know, you always get those kind of players here and there who exhibit that. I get a grazing shot at Henri, and as he begins to turn, I take a bit of an estimated shot based on the mini-map, and it pays off in a big way. Get a good 8k smack to the Henri. And now that the Henri is in danger close to the Massachusetts, I can work on whatever's at sea. And I kind of put a gamble here as to what could possibly be popping out and wanting to kill me. And luckily everything is still out of my spotting range, because they don't know what the hell's out here. And they're all very interested in trying to catch our Prince Rupert, who through the match has not necessarily been the best sport. So I draw just a little bit of fire. As you can see, those shots there right through the aft section of my ship normally wouldn't have done much damage, but in this case, yeah, they are definitely putting the smackdown on me. As you can see, I effortlessly lose about 6k HP that I desperately did not need to lose. So I put up my smoke screen, and at this point I'm going to start focusing whatever just the most targeted opportunity is for me, because it's kind of what you want to do when you're in a Gibraltar, is kind of focus those bits down. And that's what I end up going after. The Pommern is the first one on my list, and is the first ship I just kind of start whittling away at. Meanwhile, my friend Manfred in the Yamato is pushing into B, and he is basically trying to lock out the Alabama from taking B, because there's nothing else that really has a good line of sight. The Iowa partially does, but the Iowa also has the whole fleet in front of him here to deal with. Meanwhile, our Cherbourg is, he's continuing to run, because instead of just being in the back of the map and being a nuisance, he's just withdrawing entirely and has a good amount of his HP still left with him. Now, I know that those new French battle cruisers are a very new line addition to World of Warships, but I'm pretty sure ships are not designed in the game to constantly run aft on if all their guns are in front. And if you're doing that all match, you're not doing it right. So I start working on the enemy Cherbourg because he ends up backing himself into a position. I'm hoping that I can get good shots on him, but his superstructure isn't as presented as I thought it would be, and I just keep getting these wasteful shots on him to the point where I kind of just give up really quickly. I don't see a reason that I continue to pursue shooting at him for the most part. After a couple salvos, it's just he's too far away and playing with my shots, and at this point I've run out of smoke. So I'm shooting in open water. I'm not going to be making those gambling decisions against a ship I can't damage. I'm going to be going after something that I can damage and damage reliably. And that happens to be the Pommern right now. And for the most part, the Pommern is pushing back in. So when you have slow shells like the ones that Gibraltar has, you can pretty much shoot at targets moving towards you that are slow, and proper aim means that your shots will line up pretty good. Right there, you have a 3.5 salvo, and this one, I believe, hits him a little bit harder than that. Nope, doesn't. That's just the nature of Gibraltar's gunnery. It's someone makes those slight dodging moves on you, and they outright just get missed entirely. Or like here, where I kind of misled a little bit, and I walk away with 4.5k. So not too shabby to say the least. But once again, the ship relies on targets of opportunity for the most part, and that's what I try to go after. Another repeating good salvo on the Pommern again. I throw more rounds out, and I'll damage the Pommern. Not too terribly damaged, but just a little bit more. And at this point, my teammate in the Yoshino is desperately in need of help. The Duncan wants after me as well, so everyone's pushing in on me here. And for the most part, they're collapsing on B, because B is where the action's about to take place. So the Yoshino, danger close to my Yamato, he gets really freaking lucky here. By all means, this guy should have been dead. He should have been dead, and there's no other accounting for anything else. He should have been dead. And instead, he gets away with the luckiest shot of a lifetime in a Yoshino. He pulls his guns right at Yamato's cheek and absolutely blows Manfred away in the greatest travesty I think I've ever seen occur to a Yamato player ever. And even though I get a Citadel hit, Yoshino is running away. I fire, and my shells are just not enough to do anything with him. Now, here, I get myself in position to shoot the Alabama, but I realize, oh crap, the Cherbourg could have pushed in. And I make a bit of a misplay here, because I anticipate the Cherbourg to be a little farther back, and he's not, and I am broadside to him, like right here, and I press on the brake way too slowly, and I lose all of that HP for a mistake that I honestly should not have made in the slightest. And now I am fighting to survive to make sure that my heal can come up fast enough to where I don't have to worry about the damage that I'm taking. So out fighting that DPM is going to be annoying. Now at this point, the better target is actually for me to shoot the Duncan. And the reason why is because the Duncan I can actually damage. As earlier, I was playing around with that Cherbourg and I wasn't doing much. And I want to be able to do as much damage as possible before I die, so that I'm as useful to my team as possible. And for the most part, shooting the Duncan was the better shot. Cherbourg is a shot of desperation because I know I'm going down with the next salvo that hits me. And right here, boom, I go down. Which, it's just the nature of Gibraltar, that the armor plating is so thin that a lot of crap goes through it that really you don't feel like it should. Now, for the build, I would take Main Armament Mod 1, I would take the Hydroacoustic Search mod, Aiming System mod 1, Damakin 2, Concealment and Range mod. For the skills, I would get one of the Dunkirk brothers on this ship, and I would be taking the following skills of Grease the Gears, Consumable Enhancements, Incoming Fire Alert, Heavy AP Shells, Concealment Expert, Radio Location, Superintendent and Survivability Expert. For the most part, I would not take Adrenaline Rush in this ship, mainly because it's allergic to damage, and I don't believe that it's a good idea in a ship allergic to damage to put a skill on there that requires you to take damage to be more useful. And it's much better to minimize the damage and just not be in a spot to where you could get killed. And for the most part, I would take the accompanying flags, as you see here. That would help complement the ship out. And anyways, that is Gibraltar. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.